I like Legos. You like Legos. We all like Legos. Who doesn't like Legos? I'm almost 20 years old, and look at all the Legos I have. I have so many sets, and I'm still getting more all the time. These little pieces of plastic are awesome. So awesome, in fact, that they have 25 mainline licensed video games at the time of this recording. In honor of LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga's release, I wanted to do a little blast from the past and look at some old, more beloved LEGO games to see if they're as good as we remember them. And spoiler alert, they are, but they aren't as well, and you'll figure it out in a little bit. But first, with 25 mainline LEGO games to choose from, I decided to choose the 3 debatably most popular LEGO games to ever have released. I'm going to talk about them today, and I'm going to do a mini retrospective on each one of them, discussing some of the things I think work and some of the things I think don't work within them. These 3 games are LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga, LEGO Marvel Super Heroes, and LEGO Batman 2. Now, just to clarify beforehand, I have done no research on whether or not these 3 are actually the most popular. I'm just going off of the hype surrounding them that I experienced personally as a kid. Now, I played every one of these games multiple times as a little child. They were some of my favorite games I have ever played at the time they were released, of course. So today, I want to see if that statement holds true. The first game we're going to look at is definitely the most popular LEGO game of all time. That being LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga. This game is sort of one of those cultural phenomena. It seems like everyone and their dog has played The Complete Saga and has extremely fond memories looking back on it. And I'm here to tell you that this game is just okay. I know, that's sacrilegious to say, but hear me out for a second. This game doesn't play that well today. The gameplay is extremely basic, even for LEGO standard. There are really only a few types of characters, and they all play identically to each other. That would be fine if the gameplay was a little more varied and more unique, like it is in the new Skywalker Saga, but it's not. Every character only has a few moves that you button mash over and over again with very sluggish and slow animations. And that's pretty much it. And the blaster characters, what can we start on the blaster characters? They are so wonky. Getting a hit with a blaster character isn't hard, but it's weird. You don't traditionally aim or anything. You just point your character in a general direction and they'll hit something, probably. Might not be what you want to hit, but they'll hit something. It's such an archaic system that isn't very fun in retrospect. Level design is generally pretty good. There are a lot of locations that I look back on from this game with very fond eyes. Even today, going back, these levels are all very well made and have some enjoyable puzzles within them. Examples being something like the Mustafar level, or just the cantina design in the main hub. All of these levels are very well made, with the exception of vehicle levels. Vehicle levels are by far the absolute worst part of this game. Every vehicle in the Complete Saga is so chaotic and unfun, I would always dread playing as them. Some standout bad ones are Episode 2, Chapter 5, titled Gunship Cavalry, and Episode 5, Chapter 1, The Hoth Battle. There is absolutely nothing fun about these levels. The ships always controlled terribly. It was impossible to ever hit anything with the bullets or the proton torpedoes, and the levels dragged on forever. The ship combat and levels in the Complete Saga is perhaps the biggest reason this game does not hold up well today. The sheer quantity of ship levels in the Complete Saga and the unavailability to avoid them really bogs down the entire experience.
Hey! Ooh!
The last thing I want to discuss regarding the Complete Saga is that of the mumbling. Now, don't get me wrong, I do really enjoy the mumbling. I think it adds a lot of charm and humor that isn't possible otherwise to these earlier LEGO games. But if you were a kid who had never seen Star Wars before, and all you had to go off were these mumbles, you would have absolutely no idea what's going on during the entirety of this game. Now, in all fairness, I'm pretty sure most people have seen Star Wars, so this is kind of a non-issue for many, but I thought it was just an interesting thing to point out. Like, look at the scene from The Phantom Menace. Throw out all prior Star Wars knowledge and tell me you understand what is going on. What's that? You can't? Because the game is incomprehensible? Yeah, I thought so. I'm sorry. I know it's kind of a nitpick, as you don't exactly go to LEGO games for deep storytelling or anything, but I still feel it's worth mentioning, as both our entries after this one have voice acting. And it's important to understand why sometimes voice acting works and is needed, and sometimes it's not. Overall, though, LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga doesn't exactly withstand the test of time. Of course, it still has a lot of charm. But with things like the clunky and repetitive gameplay and certain bad levels, The Complete Saga feels very outdated by today's standards, which makes sense. I mean, the game came out 15 years ago, so of course the game is going to feel dated. I would still definitely overall recommend going back to this one, though, for the nostalgia factor alone, because there are some things that you just cannot hate about this game. For example, the sound design is phenomenal, mumbling included, as well as the charm and the puzzles that are available within. Overall, I would recommend LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga. With all that out of the way, let's move on to the next game in our trilogy of classic LEGO games. LEGO Batman 2 DC Superheroes. This game is probably one of, if not the best LEGO game there is today. The first thing that comes to mind whenever I think about this game is its phenomenal soundtrack. Oh my god. Every song in this game is so good. There are zero duds throughout. Flying off as Superman and hearing that iconic theme play as you fly away is just perfect. Or the title screen music. The title screen music is phenomenal. All of these scores have this orchestral feel to them that make it seem like they were pulled right out of the Batman 89 or old Superman movies, which honestly they may have been. I didn't look into it, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were. But all of this makes the game feel so alive. Really, there's something to be said about sound design in all the LEGO games. That classic of bricks being built, to the mini kit noise, and picking up studs, to even clicking things in the menus, or the iconic Complete Saga death noises. Throughout pretty much all the LEGO games, the sound design is on point for the entire thing, which elevates the experience to be much more enjoyable and memorable. Moving away from sound design though, and back to Batman specifically, LEGO Batman 2 introduces some newer gameplay elements to freshen up the experience compared to previous LEGO games. For example, the alternate suits that Batman and Robin wear, which were in the first game, but have been expanded and enhanced tenfold for the sequel. Suits like Batman's electricity suit, or his sensor suit, or his bomb suit, all added a new layer of puzzle solving, which made it a lot more interesting and varied, though admittedly still very simple in terms of puzzle design. Also off of that, the gameplay is still the same button masher as most LEGO games. But compared to something like the Complete Saga, the combat feels much lighter and more fluid, with faster animations, making it a lot more enjoyable, yet still being repetitive. Perhaps the biggest gameplay mechanic added to LEGO Batman 2 was that of its open world. Before Batman 2, all the LEGO games had these main hub worlds, where you would go and you would choose missions and you would buy characters and you would explore and stuff. In LEGO Batman 2, the entire city of Gotham is explorable, and it is awesome. This city is absolutely oozing with style, and it is so fun to just walk or drive or fly around and explore. My personal favorite part of the game as a kid was flying around the open world and unlocking all the characters I could find. And even today, that still is fun to do. There's something about Gotham in LEGO Batman 2 that I feel has never been replicated in a LEGO game since. They've definitely tried, to varying degrees, but nothing has topped LEGO Batman 2 since it came out almost 10 years ago. It's just so iconic. There are so many memorable locations, like Joker's Funland or Wayne Tower, the Daily Planet Globe or Wayne Manor. Everything about the world of this game is stellar. The open world, though, wasn't the only huge change to come with LEGO Batman 2. The other is that of voice acting. This was the first LEGO game to ever introduce voice acting. Not just mumbles, actual people talking and reading lines. This meant that they could tell a completely original and new story. But the question to be asked is that story good? Well, I mean, it's better than the Complete Saga, because it actually tells a coherent narrative. Not a high bar, I know. I'm sorry, Star Wars. The voice actors all do a pretty good job here, but seeing as this is a kid's game, the story is pretty basic. All the villains are let loose in Gotham, and Batman has to team up with the other DC superheroes to stop them. Even though the story is simple, it's effective. It wasn't a completely new addition to the series though, as LEGO Batman 1 was very similar in premise, just without the other DC superheroes. But the addition of voice acting opened the door for so many new and exciting original ideas for the future. Looking back, this was done to varying degrees. Some games, like the LEGO Avengers tie-in game and the LEGO Force Awakens tie-in game, suffer from using real voiced dialogue from the movies. This makes the game's dialogue feel very choppy and weird, as they had to cut it in certain places to make it fit the game, and also make it shorter to fit the game's cutscene length. Yeah, and those are two bad examples, but there's also many more good examples in my opinion. Like LEGO Marvel Superheroes 1 and 2, or LEGO DC Supervillains, or LEGO Dimensions. All of these use voice acting to make all new and original stories that I feel greatly benefit from having voice acting. Overall, in terms of recommendations, I would absolutely recommend LEGO Batman 2. Sure, it's 10 years old, but things like the voice acting in the open world, and especially the music, make this game such a treat to go back and play today. It's not nearly as much of a chore, at least in my opinion, as it is to go back and play the Complete Saga. So overall, yeah, I would highly recommend LEGO Batman 2. The last of our LEGO games variety pack to discuss is that of 2013's LEGO Marvel Superheroes. This was the next mainline licensed game to release after LEGO Batman 2, and it shares a lot of similarities with it. The biggest being its open world design and character voice acting. The open world of LEGO Marvel Superheroes is another absolute classic. I wouldn't say it's as good as Lego Batman, but it's certainly up there with the best Lego open worlds. The rendition of Manhattan in Lego Marvel, though simplistic, is still great. That classic ambient background music is to die for. The helicarrier was always so cool to have as this sort of hub area, and the wide array of characters all make this game stand out. There are 155 characters in LEGO Marvel Superheroes, which today might not seem like a lot compared to the 380 the Skywalker Saga boasts about. But in 2013, this was huge, especially compared to LEGO Batman 2, which came out only a year before and had 50 characters. That's a 105 character difference in only 1 year. And this game had all the classics. From the Avengers and the Guardians of the Galaxy, to Spider-Man or the X-Men, and even the Fantastic Four. Truly, everybody was represented in this game. Which is ironic, because the next LEGO Marvel game, LEGO Marvel's Avengers, removed all of the X-Men and Fantastic Four and Spider-Man related things to keep it in line with the MCU, and I feel it really suffered because of it. With 155 characters though, the classic issue of repetition has to be addressed. Sure, there may be all these characters to choose from, but in truth, they're all pretty much skins of one another. Yeah, they have their special abilities, like Hulk can jump really far, and Spider-Man can swing webs, and Wolverine can dig, and Thor and Iron Man can fly, but I feel that they set them apart to a certain extent, but when everything is dying in 2 hits, it's pretty hard to have true gameplay variety of characters. I'm not saying that this is an objectively bad thing or anything. This allows us to have this huge cast of characters, but I want you to look at me right now and tell me that you're playing LEGO Marvel Superheroes to play as Hydra Agent. If you are, you're lying to yourself. There's a lot of filler characters in this game and subsequent games. That's just how it is. They use that to pad out the roster, which once again isn't necessarily a bad thing. I just think it's worth pointing out. I want to talk about the story a little bit for this game though. Compared to its predecessor, LEGO Batman 2, it's about the same really. It is. This one involves Dr. Doom, and he's gathering these cosmic bricks, and he wants to use them to rule the world. And he does this by assembling a group of supervillains to help him, and now it's up to all the supergroups to stop them. Like I said, pretty much the same as LEGO Batman 2, except this time there's a bunch of bricks. Looking back now, this story in particular isn't great. The voice acting is...
Sorry, surfer dude, but you're headed for a wipeout.
Ugh, yikes. It's not great. And it just kind of moves from set piece to set piece and introduces so many characters, you don't get to play too much with anybody. So yeah, the story isn't this Oscar-worthy cinematic masterpiece, but like I said previously, it doesn't really have to be. You don't play LEGO games for their story. You play them to have some casual fun and to relax with some laughs. And when it comes to all of the games discussed today, that is still very much the case. In the end, I would say if you grew up with LEGO Marvel Superheroes, try going back to it. You could find it for relatively cheap, anywhere you go, especially if you play it on PC. It's not as great as I remember it being, and when replaying for this video, I couldn't get past like 5 hours. It was too much. But that's just me. Maybe you'll go back and you'll really enjoy it. I don't know. But of the games discussed today, it's probably the weakest. I think it's really interesting to go back and look at these older LEGO games and just see how far the franchise has come in its now 17-year existence. Even though today, the release of LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga paves a very different future for this franchise, it's fun to look back and see that even though things like graphics and gameplay have come so far, at its core, the Skywalker Saga is still another LEGO game, and it shares so much DNA with these old games. Just a little bit different for modern audiences. Now, it may seem like I'm being a little bit overly cynical towards these games. It may even sound like I hate some of these games, but I don't. Not at all. These games are some of my all-time favorites. Just looking back on them without the lens that is nostalgia, these games are all very basic button mashers with not a whole lot of substance to them, other than that classic LEGO charm, which is probably the main reason I, and many other people, remember these games so fondly. LEGOs are these silly little mini guys that everybody loves, so that when we saw them in other media, like video games, it made our little kid brains happy. And I think that's really what this all comes down to. At the end of the day, these games are made for kids. And when most of us played them, we were kids. Back then, we weren't thinking about deep combat mechanics or how coherent the story is. All we cared about was playing as Batman or Spider-Man or Luke Skywalker and beating up bad guys. And really, at the end of the day, what more could you ask for?